thank you for doing this. Before.
Mhm.
Yeah, perfect. Now we can
Yeah,
see you.
is it visible now?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
you're visible now.
There's some problem in the settings. Great. Super. Yeah, thanks for having me also. Like, interesting. By the way, I have a hard stop at 7:30, so I'll try to like expedite from my end on the session and then like open it up with questions and everything so that we are able to kind of wrap it up by
Correct, correct.
7:30,
Just from a timeline point of view, your PPT will be finished by when? Which you
It's
schedule.
like it's a 15-20 minute slide, majorly kind of just to kind of set the context of the talk and also kind of give a quick background about City Foundation and everything. And then
Yeah,
it's more of a like a fluid conversation. If people have questions in between, you can ask them to jump in, or even you can jump in, and then
yeah.
we'll carry it forward from there. So it's not a very rigid style, but yeah, we'll keep it fluid.
Okay, great. I've also made you the co-host, huh? So you will, when you want to share, you'll be able to do that. है ना? Make co-host.
Yeah,
Just give me a second.
yeah, sure.
Okay, hi everyone. We are just going to be starting at 6:30. We're just waiting for everyone to just jump in. Uh, Ideally, we were wanting to have some background music, but we couldn't arrange that in the short notice. So my apologies. But so please be patient. We'll be starting at 6:30. Okay, hi everyone. I think you can hear me. So welcome to the Expert Growth Marketing Series. I am sure we will be having people jumping in. So currently we have 48 or 51. I'm assuming we have actually, by the way, got 120 registrations. So it's going to be, I don't know how many people will join in totally, but it's going to be a pretty large packed series. So thank you all for coming in. As you're aware, at Expert, we are building a marketing school for working professionals. And one of our key programs is the Growth Marketing Program. And one of those key challenges in growth is how do you solve for growth for a startup, right? How do you figure out what is the earliest ways for driving traction? How do you figure out how do you scale a business once you validated it? And one of those key sessions I had a talk with Nirav, right? Nirav is one of those key members whose story is really, really fascinating. So which is why I requested him he can join us in this session with us. As you're all aware, Nirav is the founder at City Furnish. It's a one-stop solution for furniture and appliance rental. He was part of Y Combinator's 2019 batch, and his investors, which he recently raised money from, among the star people are basically founders of Gmail and YouTube. So that's like a key interesting facet. Interestingly, Nirav, before starting up, is also, by the way, very young. So I think he was interning at Pepperfry before this, and his journey from finding this idea to validating it has been, discovered. I mean, I think around college or just after. So because a lot of our members, Nirav, while we have cohort members who are working professionals, we have a lot of volunteers and interns who are also, in a very, very young age. So they'll really find your story very relatable and inspiring. So a lot of questions we got was, how did you validate? How did you do this alongside after work? So things like that. So without further ado, I want to first share this stage with Nirav. Idea is he'll be doing through a presentation around describing his journey to find product market fit, how he set up City Furnish for growth, and then we'll open up for questions. So he has a hard stop at 7:30. So let's make the best of the time we have with him. So Nirav, over to you. You can share your screen, and Prakhar, you can run the screen, then we'll get Nirav on board. Yes.
Thanks, Sharad. Thanks for inviting me over, and I'm really grateful to speak to all of you and share my journey with City Furnish. And I'm hopeful that you find a lot of our things interesting for your end as well, and hopefully we can contribute on that side as well. So as I thought, I'll just start with a quick background about myself and City Furnish, and then I'll start sharing my screen and we'll take the discussion on there. So I started City Furnish in 2015. I was around 21 years old at that time. I just graduated from KMC, Delhi University, and I also had this question of doing a master, joining my family business, or going into the corporate world, etc. One of the key insight at that time which I got was a very kind of the same thing which I think you might have all heard is the regret minimization framework by Jeff Bezos. They kind of do the thing which you will not at least you will regret, at least you won't have to regret in your old age. So I already had the bug of entrepreneurship and try and build something which I wanted to create. So that's how we kind of started building towards till today. At the same time, one of the major input or challenge from beginning very early and a very good insight also is that sometimes when you start early, you are too naive, and that's why you kind of focus more on the pros and cons, which in actually, at least at City Furnish, actually did wonders for us, because we were more focused on solving the challenges rather than focusing on the problems or challenges, which could actually become hindrance for us. So at City Furnish, what we do actually is that we provide an alternative to buying furniture for temporary needs. So when we were in college days, one of the biggest problems we faced was that as students, we had to buy furniture even for temporary needs. And as we realized that more than 70% rental apartments in India are either unfurnished or semi-furnished. So we ended up staying in a rental apartment which was unfurnished and buying that furniture. And that had to go through the complete cycle of discarding that furniture at a throwaway price, and even to kind of distribute it among the friends and roommates and etc. was really cumbersome. So one of the key realization we had early on was that there needs to be a better solution to this. There needs to be some kind of a solution. It's not that something we have to do it, but at least there needs to be some kind of a solution to kind of have an alternative to buying furniture for temporary needs. So that was kind of one of the key, I would say, factor we had, like a unique insight we had at very early on stage, which led to eventually becoming City Furnish. So prior to I starting City Furnish, and I'll take questions, I'll just start on the journey of PMF, what it is, and more importantly, what it is not. And then in between also, if anyone of you has any questions, I'd love to answer that, and then kind of keep the session a little bit more interactive, and happy to jump along whenever you feel like. let me just share my screen.
Yeah, while by the way, Nirav is sharing the screen, I also recommend whoever is comfortable, please share your videos. It helps us get feedback. It also helps us realize that we're not talking to a screen, we're talking to people. So please do. So it'll make us more exciting and engaging. Yes. Thank
Exactly.
you.
I hope everyone is like able to see my screen.
Yep, we can. Yes.
Great. So I think like really quickly I will run through this PPT and then I'll like open this the panel for like questions. So one of the biggest thing I get a lot of during a lot of these sessions and even which I was figuring when I was starting was that what is PMF? Like everyone, every investor, every VC, every startup founder talks about PMF, but in very simple language, what is it? And like a very simple definition which we got at YC was make something people want. So in terms of City Furnish sector, that when did we hit PMF or when did PMF was something which we were able to feel? Was essentially when we were facing inventory shortages. So we were having more orders and then we had always had a difficulty in sourcing the goods and providing them on time. So that's essentially when you have kind of hit PMF, where you have more customers demanding your services or your product than essentially the kind of items or products you are able to deliver or you're able to manufacture at that scale. So essentially, the complete idea of PMF is something like make something which people want, not essentially what you are good at or not essentially what you want to do, but essentially what is something which is needed by the users. So that's essentially a very quick gist of what PMF lies in. Second thing which I focus on during the PMF, a lot of people ask is that how do you divide PMF according to the journey? So I majorly divided pre-launch and post-launch. So one of the biggest thing before launch is like how do you build for a product or how do you build for something where you are able to understand that what do people actually require. So a lot of time the mentality of our education system and our work system is to think internally rather than externally. What I essentially mean by that is that we do a lot of planning over Excel sheets, over business plan, over ideation stage, which are actually completely unattached or detached from what the actual customers are looking for. So I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs or founders actually doing investing a lot of their time and effort, 2 weeks or 3 weeks in building the best deck business plan, but they don't even take a single day out of that to actually go out and talk to prospective customers who might actually become customers one day. And that's one of the biggest learning we had very early on stage when we were launching City Furnish. So one of the biggest challenges when we were starting City Furnish was that there was a very big awareness problem about furniture rental market in India. And people always viewed rentals with a sense of compromise, that if you are renting, then either you cannot afford it or you are going to compromise either on the product or service or quality or maybe all three together. So that was a very similar challenge we also faced when I was starting up in 2015. So the way we kind of solved it was that I personally did around 200 plus interviews across Delhi metro stations, CyberHub, and other locations there. And we asked them majorly two major questions. First was that if you have an unfurnished rental apartment, how will you furnish that? So as you already knew, we were just validating again our assumption. So 95% of the people said either they would buy first-hand furniture or they would buy second-hand furniture. And if they live in close proximity, they would even consider moving their existing furniture if they have that. The second question we used to ask them was that if we are able to provide you a furniture solution for a 2-bedroom apartment in under 4,000, which would include your furniture, your appliances, your furnishing, does that excite you? An astounding 89% said yes, and we got a first initial 30 subscribers from that interview subset itself. So we got major 3 learnings from that. From the first question, we realized that there is a very big awareness problem which we would have to solve if we have to scale it as a mass market product. So that was the first learning. The second learning was that if we are able to provide the services which we are trying to look for, once the awareness is there is a market for that. So out of 200 plus people, we got a 10% conversion rate, which was phenomenal when we were actually starting up, and we had no website and no like nothing. We were just like 2 guys taking interviews and actually delivering the products from our like small makeshift warehouse. That was it, and that's what we were doing, and nothing else. Third thing which we also understood was a unique insight or a latent insight, which we were not even aware that we were asking. But we got that insight from the consumers because we were very keen to listen to what they are saying, was that the sense of compromise is a very big hurdle in making the switch from furniture buying to furniture rental. And what I essentially mean by that is that people do not want to compromise in their lifestyle. So they always prefer and they always think that furniture buying is much simpler, much better, at least in their mainstream thinking, than furniture renting. So how we addressed that was that even before starting on the journey, we started with a model which was a full stack model to address this compromise need heads on. So what essentially a full stack model means is that from starting of designing of the furniture to having our own fulfillment centers in whichever city we operate in, to having our own team to even deliver and install the furniture at the customer's place. And they don't just install the furniture. They will tuck in the bed sheets at the customer's house, put on the dining mats at the dining table. So the complete idea was to provide a customer wow service, which they would have not expected even if they would have bought the furniture. So that was the benchmark we had set to kind of provide a service which is 1 or 2 scale above and beyond what they would have got even if they would have bought the furniture. So this was a journey which we did, I would say, pre-launch. Essentially, what we did is, again, mentioned here, first and foremost is launch right away. Do not wait for the best product or the final product to be ready. Launch with whatever you have. Like we launched with not even a website. We just had a domain name registered, and we had a proposal and brochures printed out with some photos of the furniture and everything, and we provided them a guarantee that we'll bring the furniture to your house. If you don't like it, you just ask us to take it back. So it's no strings attached. If you don't like it, we'll take it back to you. So if you like it, you take it. If you don't, you can just return it. So it was as simple as for them. So reduce the hurdle as much as possible. Go straight away and talk to the consumers as soon as possible, because they're actually going to provide you a lot of unique insights which you will not have once you are brainstorming with a close set of your team members at a very early stage. If you're just 2 or 3 founders and you're just brainstorming and creating a business plan, you will find that you have a lot of assumptions, but unless you validate those assumptions, your business plan is going to be a lot skewed. I'm a big believer of this book called 4 Steps to Epiphany. It's kind of a holy grail for anyone who's following this lean launchpad or lean startup journey. It is a very good saying that for each and every assumption, you need a validation. And that's essentially what we did in our PMF journey very early on stage during CityFurnish journey as well. Let's go out there, talk to a lot of prospective people and see that if they actually need your service or product only, or is it something which you are building just only because you think that there is a requirement for that. So essentially, you go back to the original idea that what is PMF? PMF is something which people want. So make something which people want. So essentially, that's what you have to do. And you have to focus more than just on the solution. So that's essentially what you do pre-launch and focus on that. Coming on to the next slide. So again, the idea here is now that, okay, let's suppose you have launched, you talk to the consumers, you got a good idea that people are interested in the product, and you got that early 100 or so consumers or subscribers, and you are in business, or your business has started running. Now what do you do? So a lot of founders essentially go directly into thinking that as soon as they start, that they are kind of a corporate or a big company setup, and essentially that's something which you have to avoid as long as you can. So the longer you can avoid that, the better it is. Again, one key saying which we got from YC was that do things that don't scale. One of the best examples for that was that during very early stages of CityFurnish, we had a very limited to no marketing budget. So the idea was that, okay, now we have a website where we are providing a solution to people who are moving into unfurnished rental apartments. But how do we reach out to them? How do we bring them to CityFurnish and tell them, hey, here we are going to solve a problem for you? So how do we do that? So the way we tackle that again is a way which typically is not very scalable if you talk about, but is very important at the early on stage. So we went onto the real estate brokers. We onboarded real estate brokers as a channel segment for us. So we went out, we onboarded around 30 brokers every week. The idea was that every rental broker who was working in the rental segment is in touch with the landlord segment and in the tenant segment. So we onboarded them that for every tenant you are showing or a landlord you are showing, you pitch them CityFurnish product as well. And similarly, as you get a brokerage from the landlord or tenant for a successful let out or a tenancy, we will also pass on 1 month commission to you. So this was something which is very, I would say, unorthodox in terms of what tech startups do. it was not performance marketing. It was not something which was tech driven. It was completely offline relationship based. We used to go to them. None of the brokers are tech savvy. They used to completely work on WhatsApp. So we made a complete WhatsApp catalog for them, which they could share with prospective landlords or tenants. And with every conversion, our team would actually call out to that prospective client and then actually convert it and then pass on that commission to the respective broker. That was something that we were doing. We a lot of our mentors also said, okay, it's good for doing it for 100 to 200 brokers, but how will you scale that? And obviously at that time we also didn't know, because we at that time, me and Saurabh, my co-founder, we were able to do 30 meetings a week. But obviously with time and with different scalability, we obviously thought like, okay, we cannot keep doing this. But at that time, we were able to get unique insights because they were in the market. They were in the heat of the market. They had amazing insights of what the landlords were thinking, what the tenants were thinking. And actually, it helped to shape our business model really well. Because when we were starting CityFurnish, we were focusing a lot on the tenant side of the market. The bachelor students, young market would be the tech-savvy audience would be the people who would be interested in renting it out. But the amazing insight we got and the amazing conversion we started getting was from the landlord side of the market. Because a lot of landlords actually invest in a secondary rental income property, where they invest into the property and building and construction and everything. But now they do not want to invest anything more into the assets, like the furniture, the appliances and everything. Because they do not want to keep doing that routine expenditure whenever there is a new tenant, and B, they do not want to be disturbed with today fridge is not working, today bed is making some noises, and etc. So they were like really happy. So landlord was a segment which was a completely non-tech savvy, like 45 plus, 50 plus. Most of them are not very tech savvy, but we were able to tap them via this landlord community, via this broker community who were in touch with the landlords. And they worked really well for us. There was amazing retention for those people, and the brokers were able to kind of sway them really well, because it was complete one-on-one relation. So like, for example, every broker you would have at least 30 to 50 landlords in their area of operation who were like really known to them or they could influence, and they would pitch them CityFurnish offering and onboard them as a CityFurnish customer. So that worked really well. And eventually, we were even able to create as a scalable product out of this broker channel. So today, we have 15,000 plus real estate brokers working on a app called CityFurnish Partner. How does that work right now is that for every real estate broker which signs up, we run a program where on a referral bonus, they get for every new broker they work, they get a referral commission. So that kind of helps us to bring in the demand side of the market. And the supply side is more or less still the same, but now it's completely, I would say, more tech driven. The broker just submits the lead on our CityFurnish Partner app, and then our team comes into the picture and they take care of the conversion side of the picture, and they get the complete commission and the number of transactions, everything within the app. So this was something at that onset, we didn't know that if that would scale or not, but we were able to get conversions, and it was a success fee, commission fee based. So we were not putting any marketing money or like performance marketing at beforehand, because frankly, we didn't have the capital to do that. So I think there's always a way to do things, and you don't have to always find a thing which is always scalable. You can start with things which are not scalable, and sometimes you will find a way to even scale them a little bit differently than what you would have done other way around. And that brings you to my second point, that as you scale or as you find your PMF, you have to try to achieve things which you are able to accomplish 90% of what you are doing or what you want with only 10% of your work, effort, or time. And that's very essentially the complete definition of what a successful PMF is. That if you are able to create a journey where they're able to create the replication of user onboarding and user retention, that's a successful PMF launch. So that's what essentially your focus or your intent should be. The third key point here would be a lot of startups, including my journey, is that we get fascinated with a lot of fake work. And essentially what fake work is that there's a lot of, at a very early on stage, there's a lot of work which you can take on yourself as a founder to avoid actual meaningful work. And in my definition, until and unless you hit PMF, your only and your single work should be to talk to consumers and develop and build your product. everything else is secondary. So if you are even attending this event right now, I would say it does come under the fake work category, because your only work, sleeping or not sleeping, is that you talk to your consumers and you build a product. Anything else should be in your secondary bucket. A lot of consumers focus on legal work, legal foundation work, getting into the intricacies of each and every expense of HR related and everything. I definitely say each and everything is important, but at a little different stage. So your priority should be that if you're avoiding your talking to consumers and building your product and then focusing on any of this work, it's not a good recipe for success. But if you are doing and building, you're talking to consumers, you are building your product, and if you have still time available and you are focusing on any of the other activities, totally go for it. But again, I say that as founders, we get involved in managing people like really quickly, and sometimes delegate the work of talking to consumers and getting building the product at a very early stage, even before we have hit PMF. So the idea is, until unless you have hit PMF, you cannot delegate the work of talking to consumers and building the product. Once you have hit that, and once your product is mature, obviously you can delegate that to your team, and definitely they would be able to still bring unique insights to you. But until unless that is done, I think your complete focus as founders should be on talking to consumers and building your product, nothing else. Lastly, a lot of people actually ask me that, who are you building for? Because sometimes you build your product and you get a lot of ancillary sort of consumers also coming to you. So when we started City Furnish, we started getting a lot of inquiries for people who are event rentals. That today we have a wedding, we need furniture for 3 days, 5 days. We have a conference, we need furniture for a very short duration. When you are starting, everything looks attractive. Any revenue, any user which is coming in looks attractive to you. But you need to have a true north, like what product are you building, and which consumer are you building for? You cannot be everything for everyone, because then you will end up being no one for nothing. So then you have to, very early on stage, you need to have some founder conviction here that, so what's the problem we are solving, and which consumer set are we solving this problem for? And again, this will come from number of consumers you talk to, so that you will understand that this is the main set and this is a subset, and we are solving for the mainstream, not for the subset. So for City Furnish, essentially it was the same thing. We started getting a lot of queries for this short-term rentals, but we decided that this is not the problem, this is not the customer base we are solving for. So we started that even if we have a small group of users who love our services, it's better than thousands of people who just like our services, but they are not affected by, essentially moved by what we are trying to do. So it's very important to have hundreds of users which are essentially loving your service or moved by what you're doing, rather than having thousands of people who are just okay with your service, but they are easily going to find an alternative if you were not there in the market. So essentially that's on the post-launch cycle. Now I'll come on to the PMF cycle, that assuming that you have crossed both the pre-launch and post-launch cycle, and you are in the growth cycle or in the build phase of it. How do you keep monitoring that? As founders, let's say you have now achieved 1,000 to 10,000 users, you are hitting decent revenue, you have got, let's say, some angel or seed funding. Now, do you stop working on the product market fit, or do you delegate it, or how do you delegate it? So that's where the PMF cycle comes in. So first and foremost is that you never, so it's a reiterative cycle. It never stops. So even if you have achieved a sort of a PMF at this stage, you can keep building on top of it, and you keep improving your product and keep getting more retention, and improve your customer NPS through that. So again, how do you do that? First and foremost, you go back to the very simple basic. You talk to the user, build what they want, not what you want. So a lot of founders' intuition is basically on to kind of solve a lot of problems rather than focusing on the problem what the users want. And it is very true for any tech product which you are trying to build, that a lot of founders will essentially have hundreds of features which they think that they should provide in the software because they've seen the other competitors are providing, and etc. But they're not talking to the users, and they're not talking to the key user base to essentially that what is the one feature which you want, not hundreds of features which we are providing, but what is one feature or one service which you are essentially expecting from us, rather than we are building everything for you. So again, giving a very quick City Furnish example. So when we were building City Furnish, one of the idea was that, okay, we need to provide everything. We need to provide beds, cots, mattresses, appliances, and everything. Again, this was very internalization thinking. We were not talking to users at that time because we were still getting decent orders. So we thought, okay, we have hit PMF. We don't need to talk to users, essentially. But then we started seeing churn, that people were not staying for a longer duration of time. Then we thought that, okay, like this is a red sign, that why are people going off? That why are we not able to retain them? So then we again started talking to users. And then we got a very, again, unique insight. So they asked for that, we want an option to upgrade. That why are we, the essential ask from the users was that today I have a amazing bed, amazing couch, amazing dining, amazing appliances, but I want the option to 6 to 8 months. I want to upgrade my house every 12 months, every Diwali. Currently, I'm not able to do that. So why don't you work on that? So that was a very unique insight, and it was actually like comparatively very easy for us to do that. Like we were able to build an option of free upgrade every like 6 months or 12 months as a feature of a product after we started talking to the users. Similarly, we got an option of providing a free refurbishment. So what we understood from the users was that if we are providing them proactive refurbishment, so now as a Citifurnish subscriber, after every 6 months, you are eligible for a free refurbishment or repair for whatever products you have in your house from Citifurnish. So that was something which we again got as a unique insight, because a lot of people said that if every 6 months, if there is someone from Citifurnish who just calls and asks us that, hey, is everything good? Do you need any services of refurbishment, dry cleaning of your sofa? So a lot of people have their pets, and they said that after 6 months, my couch is a little dirty. It has some dog hairs and everything. So a lot of these insights is something which you will only get if you're talking to the users. So you can build a lot of things which you would think, okay, like the competitors is doing, or this is something which is way ahead of the competition. But if you do not build actually what the users want, you will always be like on two different tracks. If sometimes they collide, very good, but if they don't, then you're actually solving for a different set of consumers, which are essentially not your users right now. So that's again a founder's intuition, that you always try to do more, where essentially you have to focus on doing less, but doing less really well. So that's a very key insight, and that needs to be again in the iteration cycle, that you need to keep repeating that again and again. Third and foremost is that a lot of founders always focus on competition more than again, like focusing more towards the customer. Again, a very good saying that a lot of startup companies always die of suicide rather than like murder. So like your competition is not going to kill you, but your like not talking to the consumers, not building what the customers want, what they want, is essentially what's going to harm your business in the longer run than what the competitors are providing. So again, a very good thinking analogy here is that forget what the customer, like what the competitors are building. Just focus on what your customers want and build according to them. You have to build your own niche, and you have to build your own, I would say, customer persona, and make your own, I would say, what we call in our language is cookie monsters. So cookie monsters are like essentially those fable customers which you could have, which would take anything from Citifurnish. So basically, if I launch any product right now, which is even at only 50% of the MVP stage, they would still take that because they love Citifurnish services and product, and they are happy. And then they trust us that we'll keep talking to them and keep improving the product and cycle. One very key example for that was like during the COVID stay, we started talking to a lot of consumers. So again, a very unique insight is that how we follow PMF is that every head in Citifurnish right now, like every departmental head, have to talk to at least 7 to 10 consumers every Saturday, Sunday. So they take out their own time, but they have to actually physically actually call the consumer randomly, ask them few of the questions which I'll explain below, and just get their experience, and then come back to us what their experience has been and how we can improve. So one of the key suggestions we got right now was that, okay, like we have been solving a lot for like home furniture and building new designs of beds and mattresses and everything. But we were not solving for a very unique population demographic, which were kids. So kids furniture is something which by demand or by unique characteristics is something which the user will outgrow. So for example, your infant, like any infant is going to outgrow his bed, like or a baby crib. Like after 5 years, the baby crib is useless. So essentially, exactly that's something which you would typically want to rent rather than buy, because you know that after 2 or 3 years, that baby crib is not going to be really useful for you because your kid's going to become a young adolescent. So essentially, so that was a very unique insight again we got from our consumers, that we need some kids furniture. Are you working on that? And then we thought like, no, but now because you've told that that's something we want, I will definitely start working on that. So again, that's how we like started working on that. So again, the idea is that stop focusing on the competition, just keep talking to your consumers, and they will give you some unique insights which will essentially take you ahead of the competition. Moving on to the second last slide, which is essentially what even our managers and even I myself do every weekend, is that is there any framework for managing PMF? Like, how do you manage product market fit, and like how do you, like, because if you can manage it or if you can track it, then obviously you can improve it. So this is a PMF engine which I've taken from a founder of a company called Superhuman. His name is Rahul Vora. It's a SF-based company. Their key insight is that they are the fastest email service provider, 100x faster than Gmail. At least that's what they claim. So essentially, this is a PMF service which a lot of our team members and we keep doing internally. So the first question we ask them is basically a replacement cost theory, that if today CityFurnish is not there, are you going to be affected by that or not? Like, and then we just categorize it like, will they be very disappointed, somewhat disappointed, or not disappointed? So every industry has a different benchmark. For CityFurnish, the benchmark is 40%. So if 40% users out of every 100 are very disappointed, so essentially we have hit PMF. And the more people who are very disappointed if CityFurnish would not be there, means we are on a right track. Versus if, let's say, we get a lot of people who are not disappointed, then essentially we mean like we are not on the right track. So that's and foremost the first thing. So whatever you are trying to build, if your users are not disappointed if you are not there today, then essentially mean that you are easily replaceable and not something which they would keep using over a longer period of time. So essentially you have to keep improving that you have a lot of people who would be very disappointed if today's CityFurnish was not there. Second thing is that you ask people that what type of people do you think would most benefit from CityFurnish? So essentially what we are asking them is that who could be the customers for CityFurnish? Who do you think, as per your reference, could it be your friends, your network, your circle? And essentially they will also tell you the ways to reach out to them. So again, one of the key insights here is that we started talking to a lot of people, and we got an idea that a lot of people are working in corporates. They are salaried people and they're living in corporate housing societies. A majority of our CityFurnish subscribers. So they said, like, whenever they are new to a society, a lot of these societies had their WhatsApp group for flat and flatmates, and where they're interacting, sharing different sort of things whenever they're new, sharing maid information, sharing like cook information and everything. They said it would be very good if you are any new to a society and that new admin could float in that, okay, like this is like for this society, let's say Raheja Society in Bangalore, this is a coupon code. So for Koramangala Society Raheja, every Raheja subscriber would get a 15% off. So this is something which is an exclusive. So the people would use it and they would feel some sort of an attachment and belonging towards the company as well, because this is something which you're offering exclusivity to, kind of an exclusivity to them. And obviously pre-COVID, you used to even organize a display kind of a center in whatever kind of events that society would organize. So it's kind of basically solved two major problems. One was a kind of look and feel problem, because a lot of people said that if you could actually create more trust if sometimes over a period of time, if more people can actually feel and touch what CityFurnish is actually providing. So that was able to solve by providing a small canopy during, let's say, Diwali Mela, etc. in that society. And B, we were able to target a lot of more like-minded people living in that same locality. And because of that, we were able to create more density hotspots for us. And that density hotspot actually create more, like, better unit margins, both from a fulfillment side of it and even from customer acquisition cost. So, and again, that unique insights would directly come from the user. So you just ask them that, who do you think that would most benefit from using CityFurnish? And they will help you with that information. And they are not consultants, so they are not even charging you. So it's all free. So the third point is that we again ask them is that, what is the main benefit you receive from CityFurnish? This is very important, because this actually goes in your marketing. Like, so a lot of companies, including CityFurnish, has done this mistake that we push what we think is our USP, that we are affordable, we are cheap, we are flexible, or whatever, like adjective you want to throw here. Like you just make it your USP and you'll start pushing it in the market. Again, but is that the same benefit what the consumers perceive they want from Citifurnish? That's completely a different story. So what do you think is the benefit? Like, is the benefit for a customer? It might not be the same benefit what the customer like is looking for. So again, the complete idea here was that we thought that people are here looking for like cheap furniture for short-term duration, but the idea was that people are looking for a different or a smarter way of lifestyle living. So that's the kind of like I would say the true north or like the major belief they had, that is they want to have a smarter way of living, in which way they want to be more hassle free. So they don't want their time to be involved in managing their furniture and appliances. They want that, okay, like today the furniture is there, it's delivered and installed within 72 hours. If I have any repair, any request of upgradation, refurbishment, it needs to be done hassle free. I don't want to go to an urban club and etc. Wait for that guy to come in, understand what the problem was, and then get it solved. Idea is that I'll pay a fixed subscription, you take care of all the headache. So that removal of that headache is the major and the most important benefit for majority of Citifurnish subscribers. And that was something which we were not talking about. We were talking about our pricing, our product offering, that we have hundreds of those designs and etc. etc. But we are not talking about the main benefit which the customers perceive, which they get from us. So again, that was something we started getting in from that, and then we started using that in all our outreach and marketing products. Last and foremost, again, is on the innovation cycle. Very easy. That how do we improve Citifurnish for you? So that's how we received the suggestion even for kids furniture, that why don't you launch kids furniture? Why don't you launch other cities, other services, etc. So that's the unique insight you get. So that's basically a PMF survey. You keep doing it every quarterly, and basically it's kind of a sprint. You keep doing it, keep improving it, and then you work from there. So moving on to the last slide. So essentially what we have discussed today is that to find product market fit, you have to choose a market where users have a real meaningful problem. You launch really quickly, and then you keep listening to your users, build quickly, launch quickly, and then keep reiterating. And essentially once you have reached PMF, that's where you start optimizing your core product. Like that's where you start on the growth cycle. Anything before that is that you keep going back to the drawing board and still keep working on the product market fit. And once you have achieved that and you have the PMF survey and like product market fit engine there, then that's where the growth optimization and everything would come in. So that's majorly like my side. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have now.
So great, Nirav. Thank you for sharing this. I know this was a long thing. So I also want to tell you, by the way, we've been crossing 100. I realize our Zoom plan only allows 100 people. So a lot of people could not make it to the sessions, and now we're at 95. So great. Thank you so much for being part of this. I mean, before I kick it off for other people to ask questions, 2-3 things, right? If you're sharing, one is everything is driven by customer insight, right? And if you're actually following everything what the customer is saying, then basically it sounds like you don't never make a mistake, right? So any mistake in your journey, because if you say, because really everything you actually built it based on what customers are saying. So would there be any mistakes actually you made in your journey? Would you be able to share that?
So there is definitely a customer bias. So see, consumers are talking from their inherent needs, like what they so what problem they are solving. Sometimes it might not be commercially or practically feasible to solve each and every problems, and we have made a ton of mistakes. Like we have launched some categories of products which were not durable and meant for rentals, which did not have like long-term demand. So for example, gaming consoles was one category which we launched because based on customers' insight, but we found out that it was a very niche subset which we could not relate to. We were more focused on long-term subscription categories rather than very short-term subscription categories. So obviously you, over a period of time, you will develop unique insights and founder conviction that which customer insight is something where you believe and you take a bet on versus which insights are something where you will not move forward with. So see, at the end of the day, it's your core team and your founder's conviction which will analyze your way forward. But the idea is that the unique insight should originate from the consumers or the customers, and then it goes through a funnel of like founder's conviction and reiteration stage at the founding team and the core team, and then you finally launch the product. So we have done a lot of mistakes, launched wrong categories, launched different products with different pricing, etc. Done a ton of mistakes, but we keep reiterating, and I think for every one thing which works, I think we make around 9 to 10 mistakes. But I think it's a reiterative cycle. You have to keep doing that.
Great. So no, Balki, there's a saying, right? Like the job of the customer is to tell you what their problem is, and the job of the company is to find the solution for it. Don't hear what a customer is giving a solution. Here is problem, and then your job is you're filtering to solve for the solution for it. Before we open up to questions, everyone can raise their hand, so I'll be able to call them out. While I think Rohan was trying to ask a question, so just please raise your hand, so I'll just call you out one by one. That being said, we had a question because we are building this growth program, and a lot of challenge around growth is once you've hit product market fit, how do you transition from a founder-led organization to like actually a growth team, right? And how do you actually work with people? How do you structure them? How do you align people for growth? Both in terms of metrics and in terms of hiring. So any advice on that once you scale up? Yeah.
First and foremost is that if you have the luxury of multiple like founders in a team, if you have like 2 or 3 people, I would definitely say that like one of the co-founders need to be typically dedicated to building on the product and still keep talking to the consumers and keep building the product and really involved with the product team. So like one person needs to lead that. At least that's at least my biased opinion, but that's what I definitely feel that like needs to be done. Secondly, again, for hiring needs, you have to hire for people for like for their attitude and for their insights. Because again, as you can always make them learn the skills, but the attitude is something which they need to come from. So you have to like really start by setting culture from the founders itself. Like what's the culture of the organization that the founders can set, and once that culture is set, the hiring becomes a little bit easier. Obviously, like finding a right candidate is a completely different topic. It will take another hour to discuss, but assuming that you are able to identify the right candidate, the culture will set the right precedent for him to follow. So if the founders are following the right culture and setting the right context, I think the new hiring and joinees will also kind of follow the same, and that the growth context will also keep on going. And obviously, with new ideas, with group, obviously, so once you have the PMF, obviously all the performance marketing, all the inorganic side of the market would also come into picture, and you can obviously optimize that and keep building on top of it. But yeah, if you keep doing PMF cycle and engine, like if a PMF engine is like superb and you keep working on it every quarter, I think you would keep getting unique insights. So at least your chances of mistakes would reduce phenomenally.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, you have been getting insights from customers throughout your journey. When you start, you don't have the vision of how your product is till today, right? And then so your customers telling you how you're going to be building that as and when you keep on building and learning and iterating. Great. So now we'll open it up to questions. I think Rohan, you had a question, and then other people, either you can unmute yourself or, and then just ask. Yes.
Yes, sir.
Great.
Good evening, Nirav sir.
Maybe, Rohan, your video will be easier, huh? It'll be easier for us to make it personal.
Hi, Rohan.
Yeah, sir. Actually, I have 3 questions, and one of which is clear by Sharad sir. I was thinking, I was searching up in the market that how many other sites are there which are working like your startup idea. But I saw a noticeable difference that at your platform there is a limited tenure. I think there is from 3 months to like the renting starts from 3 months, and on other platform it was for 1 month and 2 months also. So I think it get clear by Sharad sir, and also there was one point in your slides also that we should focus on the customers which love our product and not like our product. So at that time I wanted to kind of clear those things. Is it because of that we need to we need to focus on the customers we love and not those customers we like? Is it because of that the renting period on your website is that small? It is not for one month.
Like really good question. Again, come back to why we stopped the gaming console journey as well. So our idea of complete like starting City Furnish was to solve for long-term subscription. So that's why we cater more towards the long tail of the subscribers of the base rather than short-term subscriber, which could be event rentals and etc., which I talked about in the beginning as well. That's not the key subset we are targeting for. And obviously we have to decide that what percentage or what part of the customer base are we solving for. So we have clearly determined that we are solving for like consumers who are looking for a long-term rental solution rather than for a short-term fix. That works really well for our product, for our value, and that's where we are able to provide maximum value in terms of pricing benefit, in terms of service benefit to our consumer base as well. So that's one key distinction. Again, that's being said, like majority of our subscribers stick with us for an average of 13 to 14 months. So that's very like key distinction, that even if we have a 3-month tenure, our average right now is 12 to 13 months. So, so our idea is to keep extending that even further than that. So we actually want to discourage short-term like subscription tenures and encourage more long-term subscription tenures. So, yeah, I hope that answers
Great.
your question.
Yeah.
And
So sorry, Rohan. We just want to make sure everyone has time for that. Yeah, sounds good.
yes,
I
sir.
just,
Sir,
I'll
last
come
question.
back to you.
Yes.
I'll come back to you, Rohan, if you don't mind. We just have
Okay, sir.
Prashant, and then we'll get you another question. Yes, yes, Prashant. You want to ask?
Hey, hi, Nirav. Prashant here.
Hi,
Thank
Prashant.
you. Number one, thank you for such an insightful, and a very, very precise way of putting product market fit, right? My question is, when you over-optimize, right? You have a product market fit. You start talking about your optimization of the core, product, and then you over-optimize and you end up breaking trust of your, people who love you. Coming back is a difficult journey, right? You can start doing core value proposition sessions. You can start talking to buyers, right? But are there any suggestions with regards to how do you get back that cycle going?
So, like, again, a very, very valid point. So I think one of the things is that, again, from a cultural level, you need to set that, like, at least in our organization, we have said that we'll never be greedy. Like, so our ideation stage is that value over greed. So our idea is that we need to earn value and we need to provide value rather than greed, either from the side of consumer. So anyone who's looking for like a very amazing deal or coupon codes and etc. might not be the ideal customer for Cityfurnish, and again, Cityfurnish might not be the ideal base for them. But anyone who's looking for value, both from terms of like product side of it and from the pricing side of it, to even from what we provide, is a great fit from both the sides. So I think that kind of helps to structure where over optimization or where optimization would take a back seat. So if you have a true north, like where you have decided, like, okay, this is where we are trying to go, we will always keep providing value, we will not get greedy. Beyond that portion, we will not optimize if it hurts our true, like our core values. If that affects that, we take a step back and we switch on that. Obviously, but if we cross that line, we'll have to go back and kind of own up to our mistake, be like really frank that, okay, like this was something which we like fucked up, and then you kind of go back to your original side.
Sure.
Hope
sure,
that
thanks.
answers. Yeah.
Yes. I know it's not an easy answer to get. Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from. Cool. Thanks.
Super.
Okay, awesome. I just want to put a message out there. All those who have questions can raise their hands, or we can call you out, and or you can get Rohan. I mean, I have a list of questions, but before me asking everyone, I want to make sure everyone is here gets a chance to share or ask. Okay, so while I'm waiting, maybe like Nirav, can you just tell me any metrics? What are your specific metrics, or your North Star metrics which you track, and how do they break down into the people for your different teams? And how do you make sure the metrics are aligned for all the people together for your organization to be tracked? Can you specify on that? What metrics do you really care about? Yeah.
So I think so there are some like more so there are few business metrics which we track in terms of average like revenue per subscriber or like ARPU. Then we track average retention tenure, which I was mentioning, it's like 12 to 13 months. Then obviously we track one of the biggest thing for us like to kind of control our churn rate. So we monitor like very closely the churn cycle of our consumers. That's like more onto the business side of the matrix. From PMF side of it, one of the biggest thing which we track from the PMF engine is the percentage of like very disappointed users base versus not disappointed at all user base, because that provides us very unique insights to all of our segment. Then the second major metric, it's not a metric, but it's more of a like basically kind of bringing again unique customer insights and at a more personal level for our heads, is that kind of understanding what the personal pain points for a lot of consumers are. So, so small things like providing them auto pay facilities so they don't have to be bothered by making like coming onto Cityfurnish website and making payments every month, because that could also become a hassle. So we so again, those are unique insights. So our idea is that to like every month to kind of get 2 unique insights as every department in for each and every department. Like finance team would have different insights versus, let's say, CS team versus ops team versus BD team. But every team kind of gets those unique insights, and we keep building on top of it. So the ideation basically is that you keep solving from a kind of a personal level, and you do not go just from the data perspective only, that you just gather the data in the Excel and you're just trying to churn whatever information you can get out of it. But at the end of the day, you actually need to speak and try to solve smaller problems for the users as well, which you might find is not a very big hurdle for them. Like for example, like making a payment takes hardly 10 seconds to a minute. But even if you could solve for that, is something which would improve the customer journey by, let's say, 1 percentage point. So
Right.
you keep a track of this NPS score and you keep improving
Okay.
that. And again, a lot of those things might not is not something which the customers feel directly. Even if you improve it, it's not something they are going to praise you for that. But they just so basically, the more lazier you can help them become, the more happy they will be eventually. So the
Right.
less the work you ask them to do, the better it is for us. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, great. Radha, you have another question? You want to jump in? Yes.
Yes, sure. Thank you. Hi, Nirav. This is Radha. Yeah.
Hey, Radha.
Hi. So actually, I was so for I also work in furniture company and in the same industry. So I just wanted to understand one thing. Let's say if for the products like furniture, which are very which requires high involvement of customers, and customers need to spend a lot of money for buying that product. So all of that. So let's say, or plus the purchase is very need based. You cannot just buy furniture anytime you want. So for these kind of purchases, it is really important for us to segment our customers. And I think I wrote that question also, Sharad, in the
Yes.
form. So yeah. So how do you identify that hero metric that you will use for identifying different customer segments? कि ये कस्टमर ऐसा है, इसको मैं ऐसा इंटरव्यू करूंगी, ये कस्टमर ऐसा है, इसको मैं ऐसा इंटरव्यू करूंगी. So what's that one most important metric or thing to be kept in mind?
Understood. So I'll break up the question and answer in 2 points. So first of all, almost like our thinking of building City Furnish is that we think of furniture more from a service angle. What we're trying to build is like furniture as a service rather than furniture as a product. So at least from a City Furnish point of view. So we are trying to remove that hassle that furniture is something which you purchase for generations, that दादा दादी के time से चलता है और चलता रहेगा types. Rather than we are trying to build up more of a generation of how the way basically you kind of upgrade your appliances from your phone to your LEDs to your laptops and everything with more technology and more design options. Similarly, we are trying to build that same like subscription journey in furniture as well. And secondly, we are trying to build in a partly impulsive category of furniture requirement or appliances requirement as well. Examples of that are, for example, whenever there's that IPL season and everything happening in, we see a very good demand uptick in recliners and big LEDs, smart LEDs, etc. Just because a lot of people who are IPL fanatics or fans, they want a recliner along with their friends and etc. Smart LED to rent and then chill along with them. It's actually what we call a chill package. So you can create impulsiveness even in a commodity like furniture, which is actually, as you said, a need and want based category. Obviously, it might not be complete. Like for example, beds and dining tables, etc., which are more standardized commodities, might not have that same impulsiveness. But there are different categories like a bookshelf, a recliner, during this complete COVID crisis, work from home furniture like study tables, bookshelves, and everything are doing really well. And essentially, it's a little bit impulsive. Like person is sitting there, his back is aching by sitting on a bed and working. Then he's like, okay, he finds City Furnish, he really likes the study table and chair, and he goes away and he orders right away. So that's one part of the question, that we are thinking more from furniture as a service than furniture as a product. And to answer your question, that how do you divide the consumers, is again that again you kind of go back and you try to analyze from your customer subset that who are you solving for. So example, are you solving for people who are looking for customized furniture, made to order customized furniture? So that's a very specific different design versus, let's say, if you are solving for ready to order furniture, like people who are, let's say, more of Pepperfry Urban Ladder kind, who just want to order and want the delivery in, let's say, 7 to 10 days. So once you kind of identify the audience, then you can kind of build on top of it, and then automatically the segmentation will start happening. For example, as Rowan was asking earlier, that why do we not have 1 or 2 months tenure on our website? Just because essentially we are not targeting for that subset of the users. So essentially the segmentation starts happening from both from the product angle as well and from your complete marketing and product angle as well. So, so essentially that's how you divide.
Okay.
Okay, nice. So Rohan, I just want to now jump you back in. I had to cut you short. You had your last question. You can tell us. Here's Rohan.
Sir, actually, I was having question that what happened to the furniture and appliances when they are not in the use, like when they are not rented. Actually, what happened? I was checking about the same renting of furniture and appliances in the USA. So there was one blog, and in that blog on 6 number there was IKEA, and in bracket there was coming soon. So we can understand the brand image IKEA is having. They are not even working on it, but still people are promoting it. So I was thinking if IKEA can become the City Furnish, is there any possibility that City Furnish can become the IKEA? They can create a workspace where those appliances and furniture which are not in use can be used in spite of just staying there and getting dusted and all.
So again, I'll answer it in thoughts. So first of all, that we definitely see that rental subscription is definitely the future. So obviously, a lot of companies will come into this. So obviously, if IKEA becomes City Furnish, we'll be more than happy. But if City Furnish goes back towards the journey of selling furniture, it's going to be a little counterproductive for us. But yeah, definitely, we'll welcome more and more players into this segment because that actually creates more awareness about this industry as a whole, and actually validates our assumption that like this is the way forward for future. So that's part one. Secondly, we have an asset efficiency of 93%. So what that essentially means is that, like for any business, for example, if you're operating a hotel business or an aircraft business, you always have that question that what do you do with an idle inventory? So if you have a hotel with 200 rooms, and if 100 rooms are not occupied, what do you do? So your question or like the answer is that you ensure that you don't get 100 rooms idle. So essentially that's what we do at City Furnish as well. So it's called a pre-booking algorithm. So what we essentially do is, for example, if you're a customer and you have rented any XYZ product for a 12 months tenure, before your cycle ends, we start taking pre-booking for that essential product as soon as the end date journey starts coming. So even before the product is inward in our fulfillment center and goes towards a complete refurbishment cycle, we start taking pre-booking of that product. So, and that's how we are able to achieve 93% asset efficiency, which essentially means that out of every 100 assets in our warehouse, 93 are rented within that same month. So we have an idle ratio of only 7% inventory in complete 9 warehouses we operate across the city. And we have a very strong refurbishment process and cycle where every product has to go through a 7 days refurbishment and refurb product. Where we have do UV cleaning, dry cleaning, shampooing, depending upon the product, complete refurbishment and cleaning, even touch up to ensure that so our idea of promise towards City Furnish is it's going to be better than new. That's what our saying is, or what our promise is towards the consumer, that you don't have to worry if it's old or new. It's going to be better than new in terms of servicing and how, the terms of how it looks, because that's essentially what you're looking for. For example, if you go into a luxury 5-star like Taj today, you don't ask them to provide you a new bed or mattress, that because obviously it's been used by thousands of other people over a period of 1,000 nights. What you are essentially expecting for is that you get an amazing service there. Like everything needs to be neat, everything needs to look good, everything needs to feel good. And that's essentially what we provide. So the idea is that we are going to provide you a better than new experience, but obviously the products will be refurbished and they'll be keep redeploying that.
Awesome. And okay, so I get to use the last question because we have a lot of youngsters here, and in our many of them are volunteers, and they are out of college, and you have this history, because you started very young, Neerav. So tell us advice for them. How should they think about entrepreneurship? How do they think about jobs? How do you think about setting up or starting with their careers?
So yeah, great. So I think one of the biggest thing which worked in my favor was that I actually started like really young. So I think having time on your side and being a little bit naive actually is more helpful, because for example, if I was today and if someone would have said, if you want to start City Furnish, by seeing the number of challenges in terms of setting up the fulfillment centers in every city, building up the operational framework, acquiring customers, going out and talking to people, especially in the COVID time, talking out to people is something which is anyways so scary. So I think the more experience you get, you kind of try to focus more towards the negatives or cons of any idea or any plan, versus if you're a little bit young and naive, you're focusing more on the solution, and all the challenges actually become a USP for you. For example, all the challenges we faced in the very onset when we were doing surveys was that people were thinking that क्या rental कर रहे हैं तो compromise है कि मतलब क्या आप afford नहीं कर पा रहे इस वजह से आप rent कर रहे हो. So those were the challenges, but we took that head on. Okay, like that's the statement we have to solve. That after 3 years, 5 years, people. So today we have so our customer base are like people who can easily afford to buy furniture, but they chose not to because they value their flexibility and time more than what they would have spent in actually buying the furniture and going through it. So that's the kind of service you need to provide, and then you validate that. Okay, like actually we have been able to solve for that. So again, the best advice for anyone would be like to start as early as possible. Talk to users and launch really quickly. Don't wait for launching that ideal product. Okay, like we have to build this website and this product and only then we can launch. Obviously, there are some products where you have to achieve that perfection and then launch it. But majority of products you can just launch with an MVP within 2 to 3 weeks, go out to consumers, validate that even if they are slightly interested in it or not. And if they are, then you keep building on top of it, or otherwise you shift on or work on a different idea. So I think it's very important to just like start quickly and then like take a little bit of risk and be like a little bit more, I would say, naive and understanding that there is a lot of challenges in everything you are going to start with. But as you scale up and as you work, and you talk to a lot of consumers, you'll be able to find a solution. So it's okay not to have a solution for every problem at day one. You will get the solution as you keep learning over the journey.
Okay, nice. So well, Neerav, we are cost 7:30. You have a cold stop, or should I ask Pragna to ask a question, or we should?
No, so
Yes.
sorry, I have a cold stop like here, so
Yes.
I'll.
No, so I want to just take
really
this time.
grateful to join,
No, so first, thank you so much from all our participants here. Thank you so much for taking out our time from your schedule. It was really insightful and relevant and very, very motivating and inspiring. So thank you so much, Neerav. And then thank you everyone. Thank you everyone for jumping in for this program. Yes.
Super. Thank you guys. Take care. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.